1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, whatever. Oh, Carol. Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the July 6th Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners working session to order. Robert, can you give us a roll call?
Commissioner Beeman,
Present.
Commissioner Hodge,
Present.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Here.
Commissioner Labar,
Present.
Commissioner Maciejewski,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan,
Present.
Commissioner Sanders,
Present.
Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Schenk. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to move into public participation. So, for a working session, you get 1 minute for public participation. If you're joining us via Zoom, click or press *9 to raise your hand, and then I'll call on you, and you can press *6 to unmute yourself. If you're joining us here, please step to the podium, remain masked. You have a minute to talk. You have a nice little light indicator there that'll move through each color just to let you know how much time you have left. All right. And then please state your name and city. Yeah, city. Correct.
Yeah, I'm Sam Copy. I live in the city of Ann Arbor, precinct 16. Ward 2, Precinct 16, formerly known as 2-4. I try to tell everyone because it just changed and nobody knows what their new precinct number is. So welcome to Ann Arbor. There's two things I want to speak on tonight, or this afternoon more properly. I want to thank everyone who made it so that most employees at the county make $15 an hour. That's wonderful. But I want to speak back against some of the talking points that temporary workers and part-time workers do not need to make as much as full-time employees. I would argue they need to make a high wage even more than people who get more hours because they have less hours to work. And the anti-worker talking points that they don't deserve more money because you can find someone cheaper to work is just an anti-worker talking point. And the second thing I'd like to speak on is I would like these.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Broadcast on CTN, and I encourage Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Morgan, and Commissioner LaBarre to call your city council people and mayor to see if CTN will broadcast these meetings on television, because not everyone has access to internet, as I'm sure many of you are aware. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, it's tough in working session with the 1 minute. You can always stick around though for our main meeting. We get to 3 minutes. Anybody else want to give public comment? Do you have anybody online? We do not. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to report of the county, report of county administrator.
No report.
Report of the Board of Commissioners liaison.
No report.
Okay, well, we're just moving right along. We've got 2 topics today for working session. One, we have this is a really exciting one. I know all of us are eager to hear about this. It's a space plan update. And then after that, we'll move into our continuation of our budget conversations on general government and support services. We're going to start with space plan.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Andrew DeLue. Give me 1 second here, and I've got a presentation I prepared for this evening. All right. Yeah, so very nice to see you all and to be able to report or to provide an update on the county space planning project. I have a brief presentation and want to give you an update in terms of the work that we've been doing since we last spoke with you all and you approved this project last November, as well as what's to come. So certainly would welcome any questions you might have along the way in terms of what we're working through here. I just wanted to start with this slide and kind of outline a lot of the current building discussions that are out there. This is probably not an exhaustive list, but wanted to just point out all of the different building discussions that the county is currently engaged in some level. And I wanted to offer this as some of the basis for why we were really interested in doing this plan. Buildings are really important to the public, to the organization in terms of how we provide services. I think that's why there is so much attention being paid to this. And we want to make sure that we go about this process in the right way that really looks at this stuff in a comprehensive manner. So again, I don't want to go through these. I think all of these are building topics that will come up through our space planning project, but there's just a lot of them out there right now. And I think each of these things on the list is something that we could discuss in pretty good detail if we wanted to. In terms of what you approved last year, you gave us permission to undertake a space plan. You awarded allocated $150,000 for us to do that work. You gave the administrator permissions to do all the administrative actions necessary to do that. And we told you at that point that we were expecting it to be about a 12-month project. The goals that we had talked about with that item were that we would be looking for a plan that looks to give suitable space to all of the different functions and services of the county, that we would look to right size the space types, locations, and allocations. Locations, I think, being a really important one for us to consider in this work in terms of how easy it is for residents or other people who need to access county services to be able to reach those services. We wanted a plan that would help us renovate and update all county spaces and to create an infrastructure which can be appropriately supported within our existing budgets. I think for some context with that, you know, the space plan or the space projects that have gotten done in recent years have really been about where funding has been available. You know, we've got a great new dispatch center, and I think that's a state-of-the-art facility that's really good for those services. But I think we want to make sure that we're paying attention to all of the spaces of the county, knowing that those spaces are important to service delivery, and where we need to try and make the case for how we will get those projects to be done. So, and we think that the space plan project is going to help us do that in a more holistic manner. And then finally, we want to be a good partner to the public departments and other governments that we work with. And I think with this, again, we know our buildings are really critical to what service delivery looks like. Certainly they're not everything, but they're a big part of it. And to the extent that our buildings are well designed and accessible, we can do better at service delivery for the public. There's a new item on here, the last one, and this is in italics. And I think this is one that's come up recently with discussions with Catherine, and we see this as an opportunity through our space planning project to be better at capital budgeting. We know that we're getting into a big quadrennial budget process. And I think, certainly Catherine and I have talked in the past about wanting to do better with capital budgeting and being able to provide more detail in terms of what that looks like. And we think that the space plan will help us get that information. So what we've done since last November is quite a bit. And I think the short of it is that we're a little bit behind where we were hoping to be last year, but we've done quite a bit of work, and I think we're still in pretty good track with this project. So you approved this in November, right out of the gate. Jason Fee, the county's facility director, and I started to work on an RFP. I think we spent a lot of time talking with parts of the county in terms of what that should look like. We brought together a really good selection committee made up of the various different types of services that the county offers. But unfortunately, that RFP process did not go well. And we got just back one RFP that was not really a viable response. So we did some work to review that. We talked with folks, local firms who were interested but did not apply. We went back and talked with some more departments in terms of what can we do to make this proposal more viable and to get some better responses. So we did that in March, and at that point, we did have a better return. We only got 3 responses, but they were 3 quality responses and were enough for us to go through and to have some real options in terms of thinking about how we were able to do this work. That RFP closed in May. We did a selection process, which happened over the month of June, again, with that same selection committee who helped us design the RFP process back earlier in the year. And within the past couple of weeks, we've actually closed the RFP process and selected Jones Lang LaSalle as the preferred vendor for the space plan for the county. My apologies on the mask as well. Commissioner Maciejewski observed this firsthand. I was at the city of Chelsea and tend to get a little bit elevated when presenting through a mask. So I guess I'll do my best here to pace myself and not be in that same situation again. So the RFP criteria in terms of what we asked for was very similar to what we all talked about with you. And I think it's important here to talk about what we're expecting that this project will look like, understanding that while we've selected an RFP vendor, we're not yet done with contract negotiations, and that's currently work that's ongoing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we want, again, those goals that I previously mentioned in terms of right sizing space, providing suitable space and an infrastructure which can be appropriately maintained and supported. We want a process that's very high engagement. I think really critical for us is thinking first about service delivery and the extent to which our buildings either help or make harder service delivery, and putting that at the middle of what we're trying to do with thinking about our buildings. And so that includes engagement with you all and other organizational leadership in terms of understanding priorities. There's certainly some different criteria to consider with what our buildings look like, and I've got an example a little bit later in the presentation I'd like to work through, but there's some trade-offs in terms of how we design our buildings and the amount of money that we want to put into those buildings in terms of service delivery. We also want to really engage the experts that we've got in facilities. A lot of great work to maintain these and to make sure that the buildings continue to function well. And we've got a ton of documentation. I want to make sure that we're pulling on that in-house expertise there. And then we've planned a lot for talking with departments and offices and our existing tenants to understand, what are their needs, what's working well for their spaces, what are not working well for their spaces, and where do they see themselves going over the course of the next 5 or 10 years in terms of understanding, not what do they need today, but what will they need, should their services continue to grow and adapt based on what they're seeing in their fields. And then finally, we wanted to include a way to hear from people who aren't currently, occupying our spaces as tenants, but who use them, right? And so that's the public, that's our local government partners, that's other people who maybe help get people to receive county services. And so we've also included in there a mechanism to hear from the public in terms of what our spaces should look like. And then finally, we want a plan that can be useful and that we can do something with when the planning process is done. And so there's two big parts in terms of the plan that we've asked for. The first is asking for an assessment of our current facilities. And there's some work that's already underway on that. But I think the big part of it is thinking about our future facility needs and what projects and what buildings we need to be thinking about in terms of the county's infrastructure going forward. So our current status, our contract, again, we've selected a vendor, but we are not yet finalized with that contract. We're in discussions currently. They're going well, really excited and think that those will be done soon. But unfortunately, as of this meeting, that contract's not yet finalized. The time frame, I mentioned a 12-month time frame from the November approval last year. It'll be a little bit longer than 12 months from that meeting. Right now, we are still expecting 6 to 7 months for plan development, but that would unfortunately put the plan coming back likely early in 2023. Before we had talked about trying to get that back to you in 2022. And I think that additional RFP process ate up 3 more months of our process or our planning time that we were hoping that it would. And then finally, the cost. You allocated $150,000 for this project. We got a range of RFP responses. Some came in underneath that, but 2 came in above that. And the preferred vendor for the county is actually above the $150,000 you've allocated. The final contract amount will be determined after negotiations, and we've got a good idea of where that will be. But so we're hoping to come back to you all next month with a budget adjustment that would cover the difference with that. Likely asking you all to take the funds out of fund balance. And I think just on that, certainly this is not. I think it will not be an inexpensive plan, but hopefully. And it's my intent that this will be a valuable plan for the county. On an annual basis, we spend about $10 million a year on our facilities. And so several $100,000 to think about the $100 million that will be spent over the next decade is a relatively small portion. I think it's my hope that we can help to offset the cost of this planning project through the savings that we would achieve in the facilities infrastructure over that time frame. So I wanted to leave you all tonight, I think, with an example of the type of exercise we're expecting to work through over the course of this planning process. And so I would invite you all to look around you. I think chosen this building, I think given that it's probably most familiar with the county's infrastructure to all of you. But what we're thinking about for this process are really 3 different inputs that will go into our plan development. First is understanding the priorities. And I know this is tiny here, but these are the different trade-offs that we are expecting. And really, we need you all to take some decisions on helping us understand. So how important is the cost of our facilities? How important is the accessibility, the location? The historic value, I think, is one that comes up when thinking about this building in particular, and that, as an old post office that has been renovated, that the working inside of this space in a historic structure might be valuable for certain folks in a way that is hard to quantify in financial. But still, I think we don't want to entirely discount, the historic nature of the building. And so to the extent that you all can help us understand where that falls as an important criteria for our buildings is going to be helpful for us in the planning process. We want to understand space utilization, the safety and security aspects of our building. To what extent, do we need our buildings to be very secure and have a lot of security apparatus at the front end versus, how welcoming, and not that those things are opposites, but, how easy do we want to have it to be to get into our buildings? How customized do we want our buildings to be versus how universal? And how fast are we willing to move to understand or to make the changes happen? Are you all interested in a wholesale rethinking of our county portfolio, or would a more gradual transition over time be helpful? So I don't think that those are exhaustive in terms of the types of priorities that we'll need you to be expecting, but we do expect you all to need to give us some guidance in terms of what's important for us to be thinking about with this. And we'll have a lot of ideas and look to speak with you all in discussions with this in our planning process. Any questions on some of those priorities? No? Okay. Yeah, Commissioner.
I have some overall questions, so I could wait to the end if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Or...
So I'm almost done with this.
Okay, I'll just wait to the end. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So in terms of building status, I think that's understanding the current state of the building. How How well is the roof put together? When will it need maintenance? The building systems that are installed, the lighting systems, a lot of the engineering work that goes into this. And that's important for us to understand the future investment that will be needed to keep a building functional, to continue to put money into the building to keep it functional are funds that could alternatively be spent on newer buildings or other building investments. So we have a list of what those different building status items look like there. And then finally, also understanding the service needs. Who needs to be in the building? Who do they need? Who do those people need to work near? How suitable are current spaces? What kind of specialized spaces would those people need? And that's going to vary pretty significantly, right? You all as a board of commissioners who hold public meetings have different space needs, than I do as an employee who works in front of a computer frequently, or than a clerk who regularly interacts with people walking in who need services off the street. And so trying to understand all of that and how all of those things go together in each of our buildings and build that up to a comprehensive plan for what our buildings should look like. So that's where we are. And again, I regret not being able to say a little bit more about the specific proposal that we have ahead of us. But you will hear from us soon. And we're very hopeful that those negotiations will conclude in the near future.
All right, Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate the update on this. I think there is a lot of work to be done with our infrastructure at the county. I think we have a lot of aging infrastructure and a lot of changing needs for what we're in need of as the county government. And I think you alluded to this, but I guess a big question is looking at those space plan goals. Are we thinking, I guess, big enough with those goals, or are we thinking with a long-term vision for what the county infrastructure should look like long into the future? I think there's certainly value in saying essentially, here's what we can do without spending more resources to make, create more efficiency and better utilize the space that we have. But I see a lot of buildings that are aging pretty quickly, like the courthouse here downtown. I see a lot of surface parking lots that I've harped on a bit that I think are poor uses of land in a downtown, regardless of what downtown they're in. And I guess my question is, are we thinking about those things in our goals as well, the broader kind of community impact of our footprint? I'll stop there, but I guess that's the question I have.
Yes, I think is the short answer. We definitely are. So I don't know that this plan will be able to address all of that, but certainly this plan is a fundamental input to those types of discussions, because I think it gives us information about some of the financial metrics. Again, where do we have buildings that are expensive or are all of our buildings are relatively expensive. We spend a lot of money on them, but how much value does the county get out of those? So I think the hope from this is that this initial planning process will help tee up and provide a lot of the really necessary information to have those discussions. Certainly for myself thinking about the downtown Ann Arbor campus and, the I think four buildings, pardon me, I'll get back to you if I'm wrong on that, but the buildings we have downtown, right, and how those are organized and the vacant lots that are downtown and alternatives for the reconfiguration of those things, I think are something that we're very closely thinking about through this planning process. I think and again, not wanting to get too far into the specific proposal just because we're still in negotiations, but that's been very much at front of mind, and not the balance between the feasible planning horizon where we have some sort of relative certainty in terms of what operations will look like versus very large strategic decisions in terms of what I think from our leadership level in terms of what our campus should look like are both things that we hope that this plan will help further as discussions.
Commissioner Labar.
Sure. Andrew, thanks for the overview here. I think you're doing this the right way, and appreciate that you put this process out. And I think we're well served by the fact that our administrator led our infrastructure program prior to this role, and I think it's certainly an important question for us. I think one thing that this board could do is in some way, shape, or form, either through resolution or some other form of communication, give a sense of priority in terms of infrastructure around, I think, one, service delivery. The other is cost. The third is legacy or life of operation. And I think the fourth would be geographic distribution. I think in the past, we have looked at buildings within the organization sort of as certainly service delivery, but we've also looked at them as sort of hard physical infrastructure, and for obvious reason. But I wonder if we wouldn't serve you in what you're trying to do now by sort of reprioritizing those however we may, see fit. I would encourage us to put human service delivery as the top mechanism, because I think it will guide your efforts is best I could recommend, but I don't know what colleagues think. I do think that might be something that was helpful for the 9 of us, just to give sort of, here's our priority list, go forth. But whatever priorities those may be, I appreciate knowing how much thought and effort the team has put into it. And just a quick plug, there is a very good county infrastructure portfolio up on the website. And so if you ever want to know how many buildings we have, what years they were built, what special features they have, and so forth, it's all up there. So thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and may I respond? Because I think certainly we've got ideas in terms of how we glean all of your priorities around buildings. And so don't want to say that we haven't thought about that. We're not ready to do that tonight, but that's one of the first things we've got to do. And we've got to get that right, because that framing is really going to give us a lot of guidance in terms of how we evaluate these different building criteria over the course of the planning process. So we're working on it. You'll hear more from us on it, hopefully in the very near future, because that's something we just got to get right. And to the infrastructure portfolio, that's all Jason and the facilities management team.
Commissioner Shink.
Thanks. I want to say thank you to you and to everybody who's been working on space plan. I know it's been a long time coming. It was something that we wanted to get started even before the pandemic. And then with the pandemic, people's work habits have changed and people's service utilization habits have changed as well. And so it's really important and really timely. I also know we've been getting a fair number of requests to use county space for organizations that serve the public, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful way to partner with community organizations. And so I am looking forward. It's a very slow process, as many things in government are, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, and I appreciate the work that's being taken to figure out what is the best way for going forward. And at $100 million over 10 years, it's a lot. It's a big ticket item.
Yeah, that's pre-inflation, so it'll probably go up. But thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, I think the other piece that I'm not seeing in the goals, and I think I know you are aware of it, but the looking at reductions of our carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to hear more about that.
Certainly it's in there. And I'd be happy to talk at length in terms of how we expect that to come in. That's something that Jason and I talk a lot about, and the climate action team talks a lot about. It's referenced on the first page of kind of one of those broad building discussions that we're thinking about. So it's definitely in there. I think in terms of this project, we likely will not be getting to building design level things, which is really where you start talking about how do you get to be LEED certified or net zero at the building level. But the right people are involved in the project to make sure that we do this, because it's a different planning process, but they've got to align as well.
Okay. Another question, is there a plan to, I guess I would like to see a very intentional plan to stop leasing space when we own so much as the county. I feel like spending money on leasing space, particularly in downtown Ann Arbor, but anywhere, seems like a poor use of resources.
Yes, I wouldn't say poor use of resources, but I think that specific use of resources is something that we're going to look at. And so our, the preferred vendor has experience looking at leases. I mean, Jason and the facilities team do as well, but also on the first slide I showed, and there are 2 specific leases. The city center building lease expires soon, and so we are preparing for that. And then there's also a lease where the county is the lessor to the state of Michigan, and so we're also thinking about that engagement. But lease space versus own space is inside of the scope of what we're thinking about here. And so I think we got to be able to address like how good of decision is that, right? And what are the alternatives if that's not a good decision? And if it is, I think have to have a justifiable case for why it is. I guess my intuition is that it's not, but I think we want to do the math on that and be able to really understand what the trade-off is there.
I think you make a great point. It may not be a poor use of space. It might be the most efficient way to accomplish what we want to accomplish. I would wager that there's perhaps a more cost-effective way for the county, given how much we own, even if it means moving some things out of downtown to other parts of the county. But I think you should certainly thoroughly assess that with folks who know more about it than I do just talking here.
And certainly I don't want it to come across like I want to renew those leases, but we're looking at it through this plan, and that's part of what we're doing. And so you can expect an answer on that through a planning.
No,
process.
you make a great point there. So I appreciate that. And then the last thing I guess I would add is I would like to just strongly emphasize looking at the best use of the land, because I think we look at what our needs are as county government, and that certainly is a top priority. But if we're not fully utilizing land that is in high demand for housing or other needs, I think that we are doing a disservice to the community. So I'd like an emphasis on that to say, if we're not going to use a piece of land for something, let's do something better with it, whatever that may be, so that we aren't just sitting on land that could be utilized for a whole bunch of critical needs in the community. So I guess I would emphasize that. And then the other is just a little concern on the timeline. I think when we initially talked about this, the plan was for it to come to us by the end of the year. And it sounds like from here, that's not going to come till next year. And my only concern is you're going to have potentially a number of new commissioners at the table. And so they won't have all of that history that we've had in having this conversation, very straightforward things that I've learned through the process that on first look, I might say, oh, of course, this is a good idea. Why wouldn't we do this? But as we look at things in more detail, we learn that maybe there's a better way to do it.
Certainly. And I think we've been thinking about this as a long-term plan for the county that was going to span multiple boards anyway, and that we would have some education work to do regardless of when the plan itself is completed, and trying to, we anticipate that board priorities are going to change, right? And you all as a board might respond differently to priorities for county space than next year's board, for example. So again, I'm sorry that it's not going to be done this year, but I also think that we do have a very strong proposal right now that will give us the plan that the county needs, even if it's not ready by December. And so I think it was our goal to bring it back this year for all the reasons you've cited, but I think practically having to redo the RFP ate up some time, but for that we likely would have been here, but we just had to redo that process.
Yeah, well, this seems like great work, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for indulging me, everyone. Thanks, Chair.
Anybody else? Not seeing anybody else. Thank you, Andrew. I know this is really important to you. You've done a ton of work with it. I got one question.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So I know you spent a lot of time on this so far, and there's a lot of strategic advantage to us doing this at the same time as we do the climate action plan. Could you just talk a little bit about that so everybody knows?
So that was one of the revisions that we made between the first round of the RFP and the second round of the RFP. I think we really specified a lot of stuff that we know is important and will be important in the eventual design of our buildings. Thinking about proximity to transit lines, right, would be one. And so, if we're on transit lines, it's going to be easier for people to get there. It helps with the parking question, makes, and if we also think about being on transit lines as being near to more larger population areas, and, just trying to think about some of those site and building specific questions. And the feedback we got was really, those are good things to think about, but it's too soon. And our project is really going to tee up the specific building projects that we need to think about. And similar to the environmental or the climate concerns, those are things that we need to be mindful of. And I think to some degree, we've tried to leave space for thinking about those things through this planning process. So they'll come up, but they're not going to be main drivers just because we're not at that phase of building design yet. So I think about that stuff and expect it to come up as we get into questions about specific buildings, right? And where's the parcel on that building? How's it oriented? How much of the site would we want to put up for parking? All of those types of things. So they're coming. We've tried to balance, saying that these are important things and priorities for the county with needing to put some reasonable bounds on this project just to keep it moving, to give us what we need out of this initial step about the county's infrastructure portfolio.
All right, thank you. Exciting stuff, and we will stay tuned.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, we're moving on to, this is our final round of the budget discussion. Is that right? It is, okay. General Government Support Services.
Yes. Wait, let me see my presentations shared. Okay. Okay. So yes, as Commissioner Hodge said, it's the last one, the fun nuts and bolts nitty gritty departments that probably don't always get a ton of interest, but are the backbone of providing the services that we do. So I do like the opportunity to highlight all of this. In 2021, for the general government function, it's not really a department, but it's county-wide things that we do. Revenues were $95.9 million. And then the support services departments generated about 31 million for a total of 126.9 million. You'll see the largest portion is the property taxes of 70%, but that also does include the EECS millage and the accommodation ordinance, which fall under the finance function. And then remaining revenue is 11% for internal services, 10% for federal, state, and local, and then it goes down from there. Looking at the expenditures, the total expenditures for support services were 43.4 million, and general government expenditures were 19.9. I did include the board budget here too. We didn't want to leave you out at 926,000, so it's a total of $64.3 million. Looking at types, you'll see the transfers out is the biggest function of 33 million, which is going to non-general fund departments. Programming services, 31.6. Then we go to staff and internal service charges. And then because of how we do cap, we get a negative expenditure credit to offset the cap expenses that get allocated from cap charges to departments. Starting with the board, 2021 expenditures were 926,000. So 40% is personnel costs from you all, 38% programming and services, and then 22% was the cap. There's no revenue booked by the board, so it's covered by all other general fund revenues. The general, it advanced on my computer and not on the screen. Thoughts? You're gonna pull it up? So I should stop sharing my screen? Okay. Do you want me to just try again? Sure. Okay. Sorry about that. Oh, no, I'm totally kicked off of the meeting, so. Oh, there we go. I'm back on. There we go. We're good. Okay. brief interlude before general government. So general government has two main components, which is the general services within the general fund and then also debt services. The total of those is $95.8 million. Like we said earlier, general fund revenues for the general government is primarily property taxes and 81 million, an additional 10 million in federal, state, and local, which includes revenue sharing, the marijuana revenue, and remaining FEMA reimbursements from 2020 expenditures. And this revenue largely goes to supplement the other general fund departments across many functions of government. When we look at expenditures, appropriations to health and human services, public safety and justice, and support services are the next largest use at $24.5 million in total. And then in 2021 specifically, we made $7.8 million in transfer out, which is the ARPA allocations, the capital reserves for the Platte Road, and then our traditional annual jail bond payment. The debt services are primarily funded by transfers in from other funds, which are usually the funding sources for those payments, and they go to a variety of bonds as we slowly pay those bonds off. Thanks for making it bigger. So moving on to support services, we're gonna start with facilities. It was $15.9 million in 2021. The largest of these revenues come from cap and fleet for internal service revenues, and their charges that are made to county departments for those services. And then there's an additional 2 million in transfers and some small departmental revenues. The use of fund balances from fleet, which we always have. Yes? Sure. Great question. So most of our internal service departments get charged out through the cap. Fleet is a direct service model. So however much fuel is used, you pay the fuel price that the fleet department pays on vehicles. We have a lease payment. So it's similar to a lease, but the county owns the vehicle and finances it to the department. And then also maintenance and then some administration just to cover the cost of having a fleet department. Yep. And on expenditures, we see services are the biggest expense for facilities, and that would include the things you're used to, like cleaning, utilities, parking, all of the stuff that lets us occupy the space that we have. And then we have staff, which is about $3 million. And then both facilities and fleet operations did make a contribution to fund balance for future expenses as needed. And then even though they get charged out through the cap, they also have to pay their fair share of the cap. So that's another large cost center for facilities. The pie chart you see, facilities and fleet and later IT are broken out into three different kinds of programs. Operations, kind of the day-to-day stuff we have to do. Replacements are the big equipment replacements. So when you're talking facilities, you're talking chillers, boilers, things like that, that we have to do some every single year, but every building isn't having something every single year. And then enhancements are space renovations, projects. If we're doing reorgs, like when we move the dispatch center, those kinds of things would fall under enhancements. Moving on to finance. So finance had just under $15 million in activities in 2021. That sounds like a lot, but nearly 2/3 is the EECS millage and the accommodations ordinance tax programs that do very specific functions. And then additionally in 2021, the county booked $1.3 million in FEMA revenues, which were basically offsetting 2020 expenditures, but the rules of reimbursement changed, so we were able to book that revenue last year. And then the rest of finance is largely funded by other general fund revenues. And the expenditures, $7.5 million goes to programming and services. Again, that's going to be where the EECS millage and accommodations ordinance tax fall. There's also contribution to fund balance for both of those programs. Staff is the next largest, and then where it says other general fund revenues, it's kind of a weird thing, but since those FEMA revenues didn't have an expense in the current year, they ended up getting spread across different departments or implicitly based on how it was booked. For IT, we're looking at 10.5 million. They're primarily funded by other general fund revenues. There are some transfers in for their replacements and enhancements, some use of fund balance, and then a small amount of revenues that's charged out to local units. On the expenditure side, the 5.1 million of services would include IT hardware maintenance, general equipment replacements like computers, servers, that kind of thing. Staff is the next largest component at 3.8 million, and then again, they have to pay their fair share of cap at 1.6 million. They're similarly broken out into the operations, replacements, and enhancements. So replacements being computers and servers, enhancements being new software such as Top Desk, or when we did Munis, it fell into that category. So moving on to Corporation Counsel and Risk Management. So that's at about 4.3 million. Risk revenues were cap revenue, as charges to the departments. We did end up using fund balance in risk, and then they do get some departmental revenues from employee liability charges, et cetera. The other general fund revenues that you see there is what funds the Corporation Counsel aspect. Expenditures for Corp Counsel and Risk are largely programming and services, which would include the insurance claims, attorney's fees, all that stuff. And then we have staff cap, and then a small contribution to fund balance for employee liability. Administration in 2021 was 2.6 million. The majority is covered by other general fund revenues. Last year, we did get 2 grants for the flood response and equity work. So that's the federal, state, and local revenue. And then the transfers in you see is for the climate action plan, where we allocated the funds last year, but we did not spend very much of them, knowing that we'd spend them in future years as that plan develops. For expenditures, the largest expense is staff at 1.5 million, followed by 665,000 programming and services. And then that contribution to fund balance that you see is in that climate action plan. So we have it available to spend this year. Last department, HR is 1.9 million. Again, revenues covered by other general fund revenues. There are some department revenues from charging time to the retirement boards. And then we do a small amount of local revenue in performing, providing labor negotiation services to, I believe, Pittsfield Township. And then expenditures, as expected, are largely staff with a small amount for CAP and then other services and programming. And with that, the list of presentations has wound down. Next meeting, I will be back kicking off the priority discussion. And I added to that just a process update as we've started the internal process and talking about what this year looks like next year, just to make sure we're on track and heading in the direction you all are looking for. And with that, here for any questions.
All right, well, thank you very much. Oh, hands up here. Okay, I'm going to get Commissioner Sanders first, since Commissioner Schinke already asked a question, then we'll circle back to you though.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to take you back to the commissioner's piece of this budget and ask what programming programming are we doing that is?
Yeah, so that I can give you more detail, which because I don't have all of the detail right on hand, but it would be things like conventions and conferences that you travel to. It would be if there's any allocations made out of the board, which I can't remember if we did any last year or not off the top of my head. And then it'd also be like supplies, things like that, that kind of just falls into the general functions. But do you want me to get the more detail?
When you have a moment,
Okay.
please, and thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Morgan has a follow-up to that one, then we.
I'm not sure that would count as programming what you've just described. So I just don't think that's that doesn't seem like what that category is, but I think we should certainly wait to have you take a look and let us know.
And I think it's a virtue of how things played out. Like I wanted to treat the board similar to other departments and departments that are offering services, like the supplies is part of offering them. So to have like a supplies or an individual category for just the board and not have them for the other departments, I didn't want to show it differently, but I'm happy to get more of the detail. And if there's a better way to communicate that and suss that out, since this is the first round of doing them, I'm definitely open to that feedback and making it the best communication tool we can. So,
Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's helpful. I think we still, in terms of looking at the budget and how we might want to make changes and have some more work to do, but this is helpful and interesting. One question I have, you've mentioned, well, providing some services to Pittsfield Township. And then I know that OCD provided some services to the city of Ann Arbor in terms of educating about affordable housing. So when those services, and maybe you don't know, you may not know this answer, but when those services are provided for another entity, are they at market rate, or how do those relationships tend to work?
yeah, I think each one is negotiated differently. And it kind of depends on what the service is. So like the agreement with Pittsfield is a long-standing one, and I don't know how often it is renegotiated, and I don't know the details of how OSED negotiates that.
Okay.
So it's kind of case by case basis. In the past, IT was providing services to IPSI, and we did a lot of work to make sure we were covering the county's costs in a fair manner. So we're not supplementing and we're not overcharging. So like there's generally the goal of, especially with our local partners, like hitting an amount that we're not eating a large portion of the cost, but we're also not overcharging and making money on our partners.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Dill has something.
Chair, I just wanted to add, there's no profit motive attached to our partnerships. We do try to cover our costs. One of the things that we've talked about being better at moving forward is ensuring that the amounts that we include in our contracts do cover our exact costs. You know, when you talk about inflation, and you think about the cost of our human capital, making sure that all of those costs are included in our contracting relationships. I think those are the things that are important to us as we move forward.
Commissioner Sanders.
Just a quick follow-up. So do we have mechanisms for assisting municipalities that may not have the ability to pay if they need our support for training services?
I guess I'd respond by saying we always look for ways to say yes. We really want to share our resources and expertise in the way that makes the most sense for the community. Again, back to covering our costs. When we have identified costs for operations, we want to do our best to cover those costs and understand that not every municipality will be able to afford those kinds of things. So we've done a lot of in-kind work for our community partners, and those are the things that we'll continue to try to do as we move forward.
Any other questions? Commissioner Morgan, I saw you marking up on that graph there. Do you got a question there? No, okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Looking forward to the one for next month.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on ahead to liaison reports. You might have a liaison report that they want to share today. Looks like Commissioner Shink does. What you got for us?
Thank you. I serve on the Parks Commission, and among a number of other topics, I just want to keep my report short. We approved wayfinding for the Border to Border Trail, which should make it easier for people to well, literally to find their way, but also to increase amenities at typical trailheads where people get started on their trip along the Border to Border Trail to make it more user friendly. And then also approved work from Zeeb to Delhi. I mean, all of these things, they take a long time once they're approved to really get going, but eventually that will happen. And then made a property purchase near Kavanaugh Lake, which is connected to some other property that has a parking lot. And so that should be pretty immediately accessible to people. So those are exciting, fun things. On LPAC, we are working on developing an official process for partnership requests. Oftentimes, a township will ask us to partner on a project. And we've always considered those on a case-by-case basis, but now are working on developing a more formal process. And then at Brownfield, one of the exciting projects that is happening there is looking at assessing contamination of the Chelsea Federal Screw site and hopefully bringing that into usefulness at some point in the not too far distant future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have a liaison report that they want to share? Nope. Okay, I'll share one quickly from the Board of Health. So we are beginning the budget discussions of the Board of Health, and that'll go on for a little while before then it comes back to us as Board of Commissioners. And then we also got a similar presentation from the health plan. And I think the Board of Health is going to continue to have conversations about how can we work more closely with the health plan to ensure that we get access to healthcare to everybody that wants it in Washtenaw County. All right, I'm gonna move on to items, current or future discussion. Anybody got anything? You do? All right, Commissioner Morgan, what you got?
I actually just wanted to correct something I said a minute ago. I did take a look at the Board of Commissioners detailed budget, and I hear what you're saying now. It's just a lot of miscellaneous things that don't really fit into a category. And the closest thing does actually sound like programming and services, like miscellaneous things. So I just wanted to correct myself in saying that didn't sound like what was on there. Now that I've taken a look at it, it really does. So I appreciate your answer on that and just wanted to make sure to correct myself. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad it did end up playing out, so.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Real-time self-correction is impressive. All right, we have no pending items, so I would look for a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? All right, we are adjourned.
And welcome everybody to the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners meeting tonight. We are going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll move to roll call. Will you please call the roll, Mr. Mulcahy?
Commissioner Beaman,
Present.
Commissioner Hodge,
Present.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Here.
Commissioner Labar. Commissioner Machieski,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Sanders,
Present.
Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Schenk.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item is public participation. We are grateful for the members of the public who are attending tonight, either in person or by Zoom, and we are excited to hear what you have to say. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. If you're here in the room, please move to the podium. When there's an opening, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The lights will go green, yellow, and then when it's red, please step away and give the next person a chance. Thank you so much. So yes, just come on up. Oh,
I'm
and could you
Libby
please?
Hunter. I live in Ann Arbor. Many children are left alone after school ends and before parents come home. 1 in 5 are regularly left without adult supervision after school, according to a survey. A co-author of this report stated that self-care among school-aged children is a fact of life for millions of working families. Millions of children in this situation are in harm's way, meaning risks such as injury, drug use, falling behind in studies. Just use your imagination. If we believe in the idea that we, meaning all of us, are the village it takes to raise children, and we know full well that the part of our county with the highest number of children and teens at risk is Ypsilanti, this makes us all morally responsible for opening a rec center in that city for teens and youth. A fully staffed center with every opportunity available for every interest and ability for children and teens. Please, commissioners, end the practice of funneling our taxes into Ann Arbor. Let's at least see an equitable countywide distribution of tax money, and even more for the children most in need. Who will care for the humans least able to care for themselves than adults? And I will say that you, our commissioners, have the biggest moral obligation to work for a fully functioning rec center in this town, city of Ypsilanti, to keep children and teenagers occupied, taking part in activities that interest them instead of being isolated, fearful, and fending for themselves in the after-school hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Monica Prince. I'm from Ypsilanti Township, and I'm the director at the Ypsilanti Senior Center. I'm very discouraged and disappointed by the decision to not add to the agenda a discussion about the senior millage. The Say Yes to Seniors Coalition has been working for nearly 4 years to try and get a millage put on the ballot. We gathered statistics of the need of the people of the county that are lacking for senior services. We researched how other counties have set up funding for senior millages. And we have tried to project into the future as the senior population is growing. We got a grant to survey voters, which came back saying that nearly 70% of voters would say yes to a senior millage. In 2020, we were told to wait 2 years. Now we are being told to wait another year. and I'm losing hope that it'll even happen at that time. 4 years ago, the senior services were behind in the county. We were all struggling to find funding to take care of the older adults. In 3 years, we will be so far behind that it will be terribly hard to catch up. Many agencies are struggling to stay open now and have to keep cutting their services. Older adults do not seem to be a priority in this body. They should be with a growing population of older adults. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Monica Martin Holman, and I'm here on behalf of my son, who I'm also his legal guardian, who is a client of community mental health. He started services with them in 2008. And last year in June, well, he's on the ACT program that they provide where they do hands-on medication multiple times a week. He went to court, won his case, because at the time he was doing pretty good, but he ended up crashing a couple of months later and we had to court order services again for him. And I had a battle with community mental health. Every time I would request the services, they denied us. I appealed it, they denied it, and brought me to the administrative law judge. And the administrative law judge reversed the decision and said that they were wrong at denying my child his services of ACT. And they still would not comply with the judge's order. So I had to end up going to do a show cause hearing with Judge O'Brien to get my son court ordered back to services again. The entire time that he had been on the program, they never notified the judge he was not taking his medication, that he was not getting the injections, that he was missing his doctor's appointments. And during this time, they said that they were concerned about their safety, which I understand that. But if you got somebody who has mental health issues and you're not making sure that he's taking medication in his court order, and if you're afraid or you're concerned, then you need to be concerned for the community as well, because other people out there. And I don't want my son to be a Oxford situation or any other situation where multiple people are going to be hurt when he's not properly medicated. Services did just start again yesterday, but it was a hard battle to get these services again. He actually was approved for it, and there was no reason that he should have been denied. And I just think somebody needs to look at the services that they're offering and whether they're following what the judge's orders is, and making sure that people are being careful and not falling through the cracks. So we have somebody around here that's going to go out and harm somebody in our community or even harm themselves. Because I know there's people who jumped off bridges because they weren't being taken care of properly when it comes to the mental health. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lafayette Curry, and I'm also here. I know the lady prior to me. I am a victim of her son's violence from CMH9. I've been around him 8 years. 8 years I've watched him. They need to hold him accountable for his medication. They also were acting like they were afraid. So I felt like they should have been holding him accountable for the threats towards him. They're not. They're just like, okay, let it go. I didn't think that he should have done that. It turned out when they let him go, he crashed. As they tried to get him on the medication, I became a victim of his violent rage. And I've just been watching, I watched the news, I watched what's been going on the help of community mental health. It's locking people up is not the solution to it. They really need to, I saw when the medications was working. I also saw when he started declining, they didn't let him off. Anybody with a psychiatric issue, they can't articulate for themselves that they need the help. So they're always saying that they don't. And that I couldn't believe that they allowed him to get off when he needed the help, and they know he needed the help. It's not like they didn't know that he needed the help. I just wanted to put that in there about the whole situation. They really need to be mindful of community mental health. I watched it when it ended in 1986, 87, when they started being in the streets in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. It was a horrible sight. And the locking up thing doesn't seem to be the solution to it. It's still going to come to society at some point. And if they can have the medication, they can function in society peacefully, that would be excellent. But I think the people that delivering medications and monitors should be doing exactly that. Society has paid them to do that, to monitor these people so that they're safe, also the person is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, I normally don't interrupt public comment to respond to people, but Mr. Dill, who just stepped out, is going to check back with you and make sure he has your contact information to follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Do we have anybody on Zoom who wishes to make a public comment?
Yes, Chair, we do have 4 individuals in Zoom with their hand raised. First is Katie Scott.
Welcome, Commissioner Scott.
Hello, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for allowing me to speak in this public comment, and so sorry that I'm not there with you, but gleefully I'm on vacation. I just want to make a note about the gender affirming policy on the agenda for this evening, and I am hoping that you all will pass that policy on the second reading tonight. A lot of work was done with this policy with Peter Lindeman, Michelle Billard, and many other people across the county to make something that I think is really progressive and really new, that I think will be a blueprint for other municipalities, not only in Michigan, but across the United States, on how we make sure that we continue to recognize people's true selves. And we honor that here at the county with this gender affirming policy. And I just want to thank you all so much for considering that. And I look forward to seeing you all in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott, and thank you for your work on that.
Thanks.
Next up is Harvey Summers.
Welcome, Mr. Summers.
Unmute. Good evening. My name is Harvey Summers. I live at 2129 Autumn Hill Drive in Scioto Township. In recent meetings, I have highlighted what appear to be problems with the Criminal Justice Collaborative Council, the CJCC, established by your commission in November 2020, but which has not met in more than a year. I have hoped the CJCC would be an avenue to support the restorative justice expansion proposals submitted to the county. I understand that steps are underway to reconstitute the CJCC, for which I have appreciation. But the reasons I have been focused on the CJCC also go back to the report issued by the Citizens for Racial Equality in Washtenaw, the CREW report, in August 2020, subtitled "A Report on Racial Disparities in the Washtenaw County Criminal Legal System." I understand that a grant was made to continue the work with the CREW report through a follow-on group called the Washtenaw Equity Partnership, the WEP. I understand that the County Commission agreed to participate fully in the work of the WEP, but then stepped away. My understanding has been that one reason for the Commission to step away from cooperation with the WEP was because it might duplicate the work of the CJCC, but the CJCC did not meet. In contrast, the WEP has quietly continued this work that I understand has been hampered by the lack of full county cooperation and data. When the CJCC is reconstituted and back in action, I sincerely hope the Commission will instruct the CJCC to undertake full cooperation with the WEP so that the citizens of Washtenaw County can have a deeper and clearer picture of the racial disparities in our county's legal system. Thank you. And a final thought, if I may. Sheriff Clayton participated in a national process that led to the issuing of a report just 8 days ago titled "Toward a Fair, Just, and Effective Response to Gun Violence." According to the press release issued by the Sheriff's Department about this report last week, among the 14 steps already taken by our county to meet the responses recommended by the Community Violence Intervention Team, I wish to highlight number 7, emphasize healing with trauma-informed approaches, and number 9, set aside funding for new stakeholders and strategies. Both of these steps should be leading to support for the restorative justice expansion proposal I mentioned earlier, and I thank you again.
Thank you.
Next up is Winter Freeman.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, my name is Elizabeth Thompson, and I'm clearly a little Zoom challenged because that is a Zoom account that I have used. So may I introduce myself? I'm Elizabeth Thompson from Ypsilanti Township, and I am a member of the Washtenaw County Commission on Aging, as well as the State Advisory Council on Aging. And I'd just like to speak to thank the Board of Commissioners for their consideration of targeting $4 million in ARPA funding towards seniors in Washtenaw County. As you know, we supported targeting some ARPA funding, and the Commission on Aging is just very pleased and excited that you had the chance to look at our materials and consider them. And we just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Mary Campbell.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Mary Campbell. I'm president of Asbury Local 2733. I'm talking to you today about two issues today. One is the administration reorganization that is about to be implemented, and another is the safety and health issues going on within CMH, especially at the Annex building downtown in Ann Arbor. Held a meeting with the county union reps on June 29th, advising that there was an administration reorganization about to happen. This is the third time that they've done a reorganization within the last 4 to 5 years, moving people around, creating new job titles and classifications, which then follow up with a significant pay increase. Sorry, my computer was on. I apologize. We are currently in the process of negotiating the effect of the MAG study that was completed back in 2019, that more importantly shows how the majority of county staff does not meet the minimum salary comparable as other public and private sectors. We are consistently fighting with, we can't afford to do this or do that, or what are you going to give up in exchange for that? And here comes the county administrator advising us that their reorg job reclasses have already been approved, and now it's just a matter of how much of an increase do they get. Everyone in the county has had their job responsibilities or additional tasks added to their job since COVID, and are often told it falls under other duties as assigned verbiage in their job description. Moving on to the second issue at hand, the other thing I'd like to speak about is the health and safety issues for county staff at the Annex building downtown Ann Arbor. There have been multiple safety issues and concerns for county staff within the month of June alone, where staff is being threatened and physically assaulted. CMH administration's response to these issues have been less than satisfactory. The response times during the time of the altercations alone are issues of high concern. July 5th, CMH administration held a building safety meeting, and several local 2733 members asked their Unit A chair and myself to attend the meeting on their behalf as a representative for them. Multiple staff members were not allowed to leave their job to attend because they had pre-scheduled appointments. The unit chair and I entered the meeting and introduced ourselves during the round robin introduction session. We both advised we were just there in a union capacity to hear what actions were being taken for the recent safety concerns and issues. No one objected. Within 15 to 20 minutes of the meeting, Labor Relations Director Corey Mason called and texted us that the unit chair and I needed to leave that meeting immediately. This was very discerning to us, as we were there to represent our members' safety concerns. We were not disruptive in any way. We were just there to listen and support members. What we got out of that meeting is that they are going to have additional peer support in the building monitoring the lobby. This just tells me that they have no concerns about the peer support safety. They are disposable. What they should really have. So in conclusion, I brought this to your attention tonight because I feel we need to advocate and support the health and safety of our county employees, and should be done in collaboration with labor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Next up is a Zoom profile with the name SOAR.
Welcome.
Hello, I apologize for not changing my Zoom. This is Trisha Duckworth. I'm calling from Ypsilanti Township. I am happy to know that you all have awarded supreme felons. Makes me sad because to me this should have come a long time ago, because they've been grinding in the paint, boots on the ground, you know, for a very long time, and they really need this money. So I hope the process is sped up. So thank you for that. However, you know, when you think about grassroots, out of the funding that you gave there was really only one grassroots organization. And when I think about all the groups that applied, how much money you all have at your fingertips, it makes me very sad to know that more groups were not in this lineup tonight. You know, you gave honorable mention to two groups who've been grinding in the paint a very long time. So this to me is just, it's an atrocity. It's horrible to know. I mean, our kids are continuing to die. These folks need these programs. And we understand the reason why we see so much crime is due to poverty and the correlation of that. And so I don't know what it's going to take, why the lack of urgency, right? Because I mean, I know none of these, you know, with the exception of Mr. Jefferson, who had something happen in his family. But other than that, I'm sure that this maybe hasn't touched you all's lives in your homes. But this is very devastating to the community. So I'm asking you all to go back to the drawing board, reallocate money to some of those groups who you said no to. They're doing some great work and they deserve to have the funding. And at the end of the day, the funding is there, the money's available. Stop doing what you want to do, right? And do what the community really, really needs. They need these allocations. They need that money to be able to further the work. And I'm asking that you all do the right thing and go back to the drawing board, remove that red tape, because it doesn't even need to be there. Per the Treasury and all of the things that we read and the research that we've been doing, it doesn't even have to have all of that red tape. You can have your reporting and get back what everybody is plans to do and what they've done with the money after it's spent, but it doesn't have to have all of this red tape. Remove the red tape and be a blessing to the community the way that you should. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
That was the last hand in the Zoom room.
All right. Thank you. Next, we have Commissioner follow-up to public participation. Okay.
I got my hand up, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see that, Commissioner Jefferson. Go ahead.
No problem. Thank you. There are some things that I wanted to speak on about the annex not being safe. I don't understand that. I'd like to find out more information on that if we could. If they're being attacked and some things are happening to them, we need to have some type of, I guess, organized safety measures over there. Because what I was hearing tonight is not sufficient, according to our speaker tonight, Mary. And then the union meeting there with the CMH administration or staff, and being told to leave by someone who wasn't there from labor relations. And I'd like to get more an explanation on that also. It seemed to be that they were welcomed by those who were there. And then there's also the two members in the audience who spoke about the son and the CMH problem of them being afraid to deal with it and having a judge order and some type of denial. I'd like to have more information on that, because that seems to be a situation where it could have been a very detrimental and possibly fatal situation, considering the young man's actions on the gentleman that spoke here today. And also, the seniors have been asking for millage, and also the formula that we're given is fine. And the promises that were made to them have been, not made in the right vein of being able to fulfill those promises, and we need to do better than that. That is something that, as they said, there's a growing number of seniors that are going to be the majority of this community as the years go by. So we need to definitely deal with that, and thank you for speaking on the rec center need in Ypsilanti. That is a conversation that is steadily going on in Eastern County. It's been running into some barriers, mostly people barriers with different agendas. But as I became a member of the Parks and Rec Commission 2017, though that conversation had died, I was instrumental in bringing that conversation back to life. And it's been going on since 2017, which is 5 years from now. And those barriers are being dealt with at this time. We're having some people in the community, the Community Center Advisory Board, who is going through some workshops to have some workshops to deal with that. We'll be using people from the community. Counties involved, the YMCA is involved, and also YCS is involved. With all of those that are involved now, we never had that much participation. I believe the participation that has picked up will give us a much better chance of having more transparency and more zeal on making sure that this happens. As was told, children are at home by themselves after school. They have nowhere to go on the weekends. They have nowhere to expend their energy or to learn how to expend their creative minds in a positive manner. And so we definitely need to deal with that. And so as far as the organizations that were not chosen within this ARPA fund that was given to grassroots, I have not been privileged to have a discussion on what were those other organizations that were not chosen. And I have not had the privilege of understanding fully the way that the process for the review team changed. It's still written in our resolution tonight that the review team should be 4 commissioners, 4 people from the community, and administration. That has not happened. I have yet to hear why did that change without notifying all the commissioners. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson. Anyone else? Commissioner LaBarre.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate the folks who commented tonight. Just very quick on the rec center. I just want to reiterate my support for an Eastside Rec Center. In the 9.5 years I've been here, that has come in different iterations, and whether it be Ypsi Township, the city of Ypsilanti, or Superior Township, those being the 3 local jurisdictions that I've heard in the past. If the local leadership at the municipal level, the community leadership, if they can come to this board with a unified proposal, I think it will have overwhelming, if not unanimous, support. And I just want to attest to that personally, just as one commissioner, just to voice that support. And I appreciate the work Commissioner Jefferson has done on it and others, and look forward hopefully to the day when we can make that a reality. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner LaBarre. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I think Commissioner LaBarre articulated it very well, but it is really troubling to hear anyone have the idea that anyone in Ann Arbor is holding up an Eastside Rec Center when I've heard unanimous support around this board that all of us strongly support an Eastside Recreation Center and want to help make it happen. And I don't know how that narrative is out there, but I feel very strongly that something needed to be said there, because we we absolutely do need an Eastside Recreation Center. We need to make sure that kids have somewhere to go, that community has somewhere to go. And I think that is incredibly important. We made it a board priority for several years. It is still a priority. We added it to our calendar of deliverables, our very explicit priorities. And in board leadership, Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Schenk, myself, Commissioner Scott had many conversations during my time as chair about saying, we will do what we need to do to make sure that this happens. Sometimes even having very uncomfortable conversations with folks that we are friends with in other parts of the county to say, we need you to support this project. It is a huge priority of the Board of Commissioners as a whole, and we need to make it happen. We've done that. The challenge that I've experienced is different human-related challenges, as Commissioner Jefferson maybe alluded to on the ground, but I desperately want us to find a path to getting an Eastside Recreation Center. We have the support here at this board. I know we have the resources as a county to assist with that. We've also made a huge priority getting federal support for an Eastside Recreation Center, thanks to our federal elected, one of our federal elected Congress members, Congressman Dingell. So we've done everything I think we can at our end so far. We'll keep working on it. We should keep trying. But the problem with getting an Eastside Rec Center is not at this board table. The support is here, and we need to make it happen. I think we need to keep working on it. But it was just very troubling for me to hear someone think that this is where the challenge is to getting an Eastside Rec Center. I have never heard someone opposed to that at this board table in my time as a commissioner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Administrator Dill.
Thank you, Chair. Just a moment. Really, I wanted to talk about this during the administrator's update, but this seems like the most appropriate time. I just want to say to this body, and certainly to Commissioner Jefferson, a heartfelt thank you for your commitment to the work that's happening. I think we have all of the community partners, you just heard the list, at the table in a way that we haven't had certainly during my tenure as administrator. And we are leading that discussion. And I am confident that we will have a recommendation to this board by the end of the year. We continue to have the conversations that are necessary to move this item forward. And as you've heard tonight at this table, resources and the will are not barriers to getting this across the finish line. So with a little bit of patience, we will have something in your hands for action prior to the end of this fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you for that hopeful statement, Administrator Dill. Commissioner Hodge.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to everybody that's shown up. It's always good to see a packed room. We have a lot of interesting things on the agenda, so thank you for being here. I want to speak on a few items. So the senior millage, I understand that it's been really frustrating for the groups that have been pushing for this for years. I would say that I think we're moving in a direction that gives us a roadmap forward in a way that we haven't before. The resolution that we're going to be discussing later today, I think, is part of that. And that has come because of the advocacy of the Say Yes to Seniors group, other groups, and the work on the Commission on Aging. So I wouldn't be discouraged because of the work and the commitment of the board. And after we pass the resolution for county administration to look at options for us to come with a full-fledged proposal for what a millage might look like. For the issues related to CMH, I totally understand that it's a really serious challenge. I started my career working at a CMH, and I was there when we experienced the significant budget cuts at the state level. I'd say that there are efforts in the state level, both to make the CMH system even worse. There are efforts to privatize it, but then there are also efforts to improve our CMH system. And I think we will continue to discuss those and figure out how we as a county can support that, because we really do need more support at the state level. But I can say firmly that this is a board and a county that supports human services. And Administrator Dill is already working on it, as the chair said earlier, about the particular issue that was spoken about in the room. With the CJCC, we have a direction forward on that. I know that this has been an item that a lot of people are really concerned about, and for good reason. I would say more to come on that really soon, where I expect that our next scheduled meeting will happen as planned, and we will discuss how we're going to go forward with a new strategy. And we've heard regularly from folks focused on the Restorative Justice Center. The chair and I, county administration and staff, had a conversation recently with the group. And as part of the space plan, where those conversations are moving forward. So I know nothing moves as fast as any of us would like, But I would say that all the items that I just spoke about, we are moving forward on it. And I appreciate everybody's ongoing interest and advocacy around it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunt. Anyone else? Okay, I'll just address a few things. On the Eastside Rec Center, it has been a frustration of mine as well that we haven't broken ground on that yet. I have been, frustrated, I guess I'll just say, yes, I believe this entire board supports an Eastside Rec Center. I serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and Coy Vaughn, who's the head of Parks, he's actively working to try to make this happen as well. So from the county side, I believe that we are all in, and I'm hoping that we'll do it sooner rather than later, because I think that can be an important source for good. I would also add, though, that I think it's a goal of mine that we might have some smaller community centers as well, because not everybody can travel, especially young children, to a rec center. But that's just, we're going to keep working. And government is slow. It's really slow. So in terms also of the CJCC, I'm excited about that item tonight. I don't want to talk too much about items that are on the agenda because we'll talk about them later. But I have asked Administrator Dill that if there are any issues with data flow, that we do whatever we can to make that go more smoothly. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for your interest and love for our community. And we'll now move on to a few out of order items, which are being pulled out of order because there are people here who have come to celebrate. And these are resolutions that we're pretty darn sure are going to pass because they're honorariums. So the first one is item I, a resolution. So we're not approving these right now. We're just recognizing the people who are involved. A resolution to recognize Dr. Doris J. Fields for her participation in Washtenaw County's second annual Juneteenth flag raising ceremony and celebration. Thank you, Dr. Fields. I want to say thank you. You gave an inspiring and beautiful talk to all of us on Juneteenth, and I appreciate it. And I believe that, Crystal, were you going to say a few words, or are we just going to hand it over to Dr. Fields?
Well, on behalf of Washtenaw County Administration, we appreciate you. Thank you for your participation in this year's Juneteenth event. We hope that this is just a small token of our appreciation for your participation and all of the things that you've done to serve the Washtenaw County community. Thank you. So you can't see, but I'm smiling. Like you can't see. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was just an honor. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'll do it again if you need me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, thank you. Our next item is very exciting. A resolution to recognize Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church for 165 years of uninterrupted service to the Washtenaw County community and welcoming the 136th Michigan Annual Conference of the 4th Episcopal District of African Methodist Episcopal Churches to Washtenaw County.
Reverend Evans, on behalf of Washtenaw County Administrator's Office, this board shows you so much appreciation for the hard work and dedication and commitment to community that Bethel and Church has served in this community for the last 163 years. Thank you.
On behalf of the leadership and the membership of Bethel, which is one of the oldest African-American congregations in the county, I want to say thank you for this recognition and honor. And it is our pleasure to work with our community leaders in order to make this what we believe God desires to be a beloved community for all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next, we will move on to liaison reports. Commissioners, do we have any liaison reports? Hey, next. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner LeBar. My eyes are moving too fast.
No problem. It's not technically a liaison because of the entity, but I just wanted to highlight for everybody that we have received the tax credits from the state of Michigan for the affordable housing component of the Platte Road project, Viridian. And so that means we have in place both sides of that redevelopment of that site. Had a great event the Saturday after our last meeting, but stay on the lookout for that site because shovels should be in the ground on part of it later this year. And it's exciting, and big shout out to OCED for all their work on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBar. Anybody else? Commissioner Maciejewski.
Now, speaking of milestones, I want to just let everybody know that the first house under the broadband work that we approved was completed earlier in June in Lima Township. Very exciting moment to have a report back that the person experienced 500 megabytes of speed on a download is the first house connected. So the work is beginning, and it's really exciting to see the first bit of line go into the ground. And I know some of the work coming up in Commissioner Beeman's district and in your district, Madam Chair, as well in the near future. So an important milestone for us on the broadband project.
It is. It may take a year or more to get all of that work done. It's very exciting to see it starting and know that people are benefiting from our work here at the board and also the Broadband Task Force Subcommittee. Anyone else? Okay, next we'll move to a special order of business. I'm looking for somebody to move a resolution setting a public hearing to receive comment on a proposed Brownfield plan for 303 North 5th and 312 to 314 Detroit Street in Ann Arbor for August 3rd, 2022 from the Office of Community and Economic Development.
I will move that.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, roll call vote.
Yep, and then Commissioner LeBar for attendance.
I'm attending. I'm here.
Thank you. All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Beeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner LeBar,
Yes.
Commissioner Maciejewski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. Next for appointments, I'm looking for a commissioner to move a resolution appointing Commissioner Justin Hodge as Chair of the Criminal Justice Collaborative Council.
So move.
Support.
Any discussion? Commissioner Hodge.
Thank you. I would just say, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say, I understand this is an incredible responsibility and a challenge, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you to make the CJCC a success.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodge. Look forward to working with you on that. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner LeBar,
Yes.
Commissioner Maciejewski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beeman.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. Would somebody please move the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move the consent agenda for approval.
Support.
Any discussion or anybody want to pull anything out? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Next, we have resolutions. I'm looking for somebody to move the first reading resolution. Commissioner LeBar?
Chair, out of your preference, do you want me to move first reading alone or all at once?
I think that it would be best to do them as first reading, final reading, single. I think otherwise we're going to end up pulling a lot out. So separate discussion. So I feel like it would just be easier just to do them one section at a time.
Then under first readings, I move a resolution to obligate a portion of the county's American Rescue Plan Act funds to various programs and projects from the county administrator.
Support.
Any discussion? Commissioner Morgan?
Sure, I do have some discussion. As I was looking through the details of this, and I meant to follow up before the meeting here, but it's something I want to take a look at between now and the final reading of this item. we're obligating a lot of funds here that I don't see a lot of it coming back to the board for final approval, and I'm worried that we aren't including a lot of detail in these items. I'm not opposed to any of them. I think they are well thought out items. But in terms of the details, I'm worried that they're a bit sparse on how we're going to implement these, which is important to me because I think I've become leery after a couple of big items that have come to our agenda that, like the coordinated funding, for example, where a lot of the detail mattered. And so I would like us to figure out some way between now and the next meeting to basically say we're going to obligate the funds for these programs, but that there will be some check back at the board to approve how they'll be implemented. And so I'll just put that out there now. I don't have a specific suggestion, but a request that we take a look at that between now and the next meeting that we have, just so that we can make sure that those safeguards are there. It's just a lot of funds, and I certainly trust our administration, but do want to have it come back to this board in some capacity so that we can make sure it's truly doing what we intended it to do, through some sort of feedback process there.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. I think, Mr. Dill, you want to say something?
Yeah, commissioners, I just want to assure you that this information will be before you prior to the final reading. And we will do our best to answer every question that you have prior to its final reading. So we'll take the time between this meeting and the next to try to reach out and answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Hodge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take the opportunity to say that as we pass this for first reading, in between that and final reading, we'll be doing community engagement sessions on that. I don't know if it's too much to put Peter on the spot to talk a little bit about what that plan might look like. Is it too much to put you on the spot to talk about that, Peter?
Might be a little bit too much to go into detail, but I did reach out to all of you in the last couple of days with a tentative plan for what that would look like, really focusing on education and input to make sure people know what is being considered, what are the details of all of these programs, and have an easy opportunity to give feedback to inform what the final option looks like. So I would just say, check your emails, and if you haven't seen anything from me, reach out. I can resend it, and we'll hope to get those dates on the calendar really soon, because we realize that the next meeting is a month away, and we want to get those on the calendar soon. So just follow up with me after the meeting, and we'll try and get all those dates publicly posted and well publicized as soon as possible.
Thank you, Peter. I would also invite the public to take a look at the resolution and the items that are going to be contained in it, so it's easy to engage with your commissioners about any ideas you have about the items contained in the rescue plan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Morgan?
Thanks, Chair. I think that helps what Commissioner Hodge just suggested there. And I recall now Peter sending that email, because I do think these are big programs and big allocations of funds. And so I want to make sure that we're getting public feedback on how to implement them, making sure that they're being carried out the right way, that we're serving the right communities that we want to serve, and making sure, some of these are very straightforward, but others are a bit more nuanced. And so I think that's what I'm hoping for as a commissioner. And it sounds like we're going to engage the public in that as well. So that is very encouraging to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a moment to read off just a quick list: accounting for lost revenues, premium pay for essential workers, support for seniors, addressing housing access, which is actually addressing purchasing housing access, investing in stormwater or sewer infrastructure and maintenance, establishing a financial equity center, supporting the health department, funding best practices and evidence-based program within county government, investing in county infrastructure to support service delivery, and hiring staff to implement and evaluate the ARPA programming. And I think for me, one of the things that the allocation that we're about to vote on regarding gun violence has shown, and sort of the feeling of being left wanting more to be done, although there are $350,000 left in that fund, is I would ask my commissioners to consider we might allocate some more money toward the community priority fund, just to consider that. I think it's, something that we could do more good. So just asking, to consider for, as we're moving forward and refining this proposal, that if there's a way to add a little more in, that we might do that. But that is not a piece of what we're voting on here. Just say that. Any other comments? Commissioner Machewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to highlight just a couple of things in here as well and recognize those who worked on the stormwater sewer infrastructure maintenance piece, including the Water Resource Commissioner. I think that's an important aspect of this proposal for a lot of the communities that I represent. And to also recognize the work of the Commission on Aging and bringing forward a proposal to help out older adults with a community fund and including their work in this package, I think is a great way to highlight the impact the Commission on Aging has had in a year and a half of really a year of existence, and the work that they've put into identifying needs in our community and immediately turning that around and bringing us a proposal that reflects some of the needs of the 60 and over population in our county. I think it's a great example of work that really a citizen-led body can do. And I very much appreciate their work on this.
Thank you. To add to your list a little bit, and a lot of people have worked on a lot of these proposals, and so we're probably leaving out many more than we're including. I know OCD has worked a lot, the Racial Equity Office has as well, administration, various commissioners and community members, and then also the Road Commission has been involved in the stormwater and sewer infrastructure maintenance proposal, as well as the Water Resources Commissioner. So for all the people I didn't mention, I appreciate your work too. Any more comments? Okay, that is a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Anyone against? Motion carries. All right, next we have a motion for final reading, a resolution adopting a gender affirming policy.
Support.
Any discussion? Commissioner LeBar?
Thanks, Chair. I really appreciate the work of the staff that Commissioner Scott mentioned earlier. But I also just want to recognize Commissioner Scott's work on this. I think it's a great step. Looking forward to supporting it and appreciate all the time and effort Katie put into making this a priority. And I'd tell her that if she was here, but
I think she might be listening.
hopefully.
Anyone else? Commissioner Morgan?
I just want to add on to Commissioner LeBar's comments. I think this is a very forward-thinking change that we're making, and it goes above and beyond simply recognizing individuals in our community through the flag raising and other activities that we've done. Something that has been very important is making sure that our words, our actions are reflecting the words that we're putting out there. And I think this is one of those items that achieves that by making sure that we are a more inclusive and affirming county. And it is very, it's tougher policy work to figure out. And so I'm very glad that we are passing this tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Bevan?
I just also want to thank everyone for their work on this, especially Commissioner Scott. I personally know how much this can mean to people, and some people it can be a life or death sort of situation. And so for us to take these steps is really great. And so I'm very excited for this.
Thank you, Commissioner Beaman. Anyone else? Yeah, I agree with what everybody has said. Treating people with dignity is just, it's so important. And sometimes it takes a resolution adopting a gender affirming policy to do it. And so I'm looking forward to this vote. All right, so since it's a final reading, we will do a roll call.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBar?
Yes.
Commissioner Machewski?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders?
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk?
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. Next, I'm looking for someone to move the single reading motions. Commissioner LeBar.
Chair, under the single reading resolution to move Resolution A, which adopts the 2022-23 Community Corrections Annual Plan and Budget.
Excuse me, Commissioner LeBar, I have to interrupt you because I meant to pull two resolutions that I did not, which is the resolution recognizing the young citizens and also the resolution recognizing Mary Kerr. We're going to put those on the agenda at a different meeting. Neither of those groups of people were able to be here tonight.
Then I move Resolution A, which I just read. B, the resolution ratifying the signature of the administrator on the opioid partnership grant application. Under C, the resolution to authorize the issuance of up to 3.925 million for the Sylvan Township water waste system improvements. D, the resolution approving the recommendations for the community violence intervention category of the ARPA community priority funds. E, which is the resolution approving fiscal year 23 through 25 multi-year plan of the Area Agency on Aging 1B. F, a resolution to expand and communicate the county resources list. G, you have pulled. So H, which is the proclamation welcoming the International Association of Bridge, Structural, Ornamental, and Reinforcing Iron Workers to Washtenaw County for their 38th annual convention. I, which is the recognition previously spoken to for Dr. Doris J. Fields for her participation in the Juneteenth flag ceremony. J, which is the 165 continuous years of service by the Bethel African American Methodist Episcopal Church. K recognizes the 100-year anniversary of the Alpha Beta chapter of the Alpha Gamma Delta Women's Fraternity on U of M's campus. L is a resolution to oppose changes to the Wagner Payzer Act and support the decision-making of local workforce development boards. M has been pulled. N, a resolution instructing the county administrator to develop a framework for a millage to support older adults in Washtenaw County. And I'll also move claims at the same time.
Support.
Any discussion or, well, first, does anybody want to pull anything for separate consideration? Commissioner LeBar?
Could we pull just for separate discussion the item on the senior millage?
Yes. Let me take a note. Anything else? I do have a couple of comments.
Madam Chair,
Sorry.
could we pull the ARPA community violence when I know that our racial equity officer may do a presentation and we have at least one of the groups here.
Yes, and I'd like to pull the resolution opposing changes to the Wagner Payzer Act. All right. So let's vote on the ones that are not being pulled for separate. So you could call the roll.
Commissioner LeBar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Yes.
Items passed.
Thank you. The next is discussion around a resolution approving the recommendations for the community violence intervention category of the ARPA Community Priority Fund from the county administrator. So I think we have our racial equity officer, Elise Asbury Payne, here to give us a presentation.
Yes, Madam Chair. Elise, is she joining us virtually? And there she is.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, let's see if I am able to share my screen on a first try. Okay, are you all able to see my screen, the correct screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. So I am excited to be here this evening to talk about the Community Priority Fund and ARPA allocation, specifically under the Community Violence Intervention. I really want to take this opportunity to commend the board for your forward thinking as part of the national space around equity. What Washtenaw County has decided to do in terms of community involvement and allocations related to ARPA funds, very few other communities are doing. We are in similar space as King County in Seattle, the Seattle area, and very excited about how this board has decided to operationalize these funds, provided these recommendations are approved. So just as a quick overview, for those who may not be completely familiar, the Community Priority Fund meets the Board of Commissioner priorities for impactful and equitable American Rescue Plan Act allocations, with project and program support targeted to areas of Washtenaw County, specifically zip codes that we saw hard hit by the pandemic, and that areas that have pre-existing disparities and low opportunity, high vulnerability. This is in line with guidance from the Treasury in terms of best practices for equity in terms of allocation and distribution of these resources and funds in community. The goals of the Community Priority Fund are really to support organizations and proposals that have not historically gotten funded by or contracted with Washtenaw County, and to help expand the overall ecosystem by building out organizations' sustainable capacity to contract with the county in the future. We're looking at the totality of our ecosystem and the ability for organizations to work with the county and to be sustainable long after the ARPA dollars are spent down. This model really provides 360 wraparound support. So all proposals that are approved for any level of funding, as well as proposals that receive just technical assistance initially, are going to receive the support to ensure compliance with ARPA reporting requirements through data collection, assessment, and evaluation. Technical assistance for all organizations focuses on expanding capacity, best practices with data collection and evaluation, and building sustainable funding models. The goal is to really use these funds as seed to help organizations be sustainable, to produce data and metrics around what works, to pivot when things don't, and that the county is really acting as that backbone support, understanding that smaller or more grassroots groups may not have the capacity in-house to do these things independently. We've received 136 applications in the following areas: community violence intervention, expanding early childhood education, direct assistance to households, addressing housing and homelessness, addressing educational disparities. This evening's recommendations are focused on one category, community violence interventions. The other categories are still being worked through by the community review members. So the application to approval process, we received the initial proposals, a total of 136. They were reviewed by staff for minimum qualifications. Does the funding proposal fall within an eligible use of funds under the Community Priority Fund? And does the funding proposal hit the target or geographic demographic area under the Community Priority Fund? The community review members reviewed and scored, discussed proposals, and provided a set of recommendations to the administrator. Those recommendations from the administrator are coming to the board for approval. You all are the final decision-making body in this process. You were the only approval decision-making body in the process. Once there is an approval, hopefully by commissioners this evening, then the contracting and technical assistance process starts with the ARPA team. That process includes high-touch technical assistance and ongoing evaluation for all organizations that receive support. Again, the goal is to provide sustainable internal capacity building for organizations. The community review body was directly selected and appointed by commissioners representing the 9-7 and 9-8 areas. Members of the review body are community residents and they are not affiliated with any of the applicants. If there was any potential conflict of interest, review member was not allowed to participate in scoring to maintain the integrity of the process. Consistent with county practice and to maintain integrity of the process, information about the members will be available to the public at the conclusion of the review process. So once we've moved through all of the 5 categories. The first round of recommendations, again, is under community violence intervention. We had a total of $2 million available for allocation. We received a total of 16 proposals under this category. If the recommendations are approved by the board, 87% of this first allocation of funding will go to organizations that were founded by and are currently led by returning citizens. The funding recommendations are as follows: $250,000 for A Brighter Way, $200,000 for Dispute Resolution Center, and $1.2 million for Supreme Felons. These funding amounts are what was requested by the organizations and represent full funding across their proposal requests. 2 additional organizations were recommended for technical assistance at this time, but not funding, based upon feedback from the community review members. The technical assistance is really designed to help the organizations access the tools and information necessary to be prepared to access the remaining community violence intervention funding, which is a remaining balance of $350,000. Those organizations are We the People Opportunity Farm and Washtenaw My Brother's Keeper. Are there any questions from the board? Stop sharing my screen.
I'm just taking a peek around the board table to see if anybody has a question. Commissioner Hodge?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment, and I just want to thank you, Elise, for the incredible amount of work that you put into it. I know this is to design this process and then lead through it. It was a heavy lift for your office. I want to thank the community members that participated in the board. It was not easy to find, there's 136 applications. You have to find a community member that's not affiliated with any of the organizations that applied, which was a challenge. And that's also a lot of applications to go through. So when we talk about finding and creating processes where community members are front and center and leading in an effort, this was purely community member led or driven as you and your office led it. So thank you for all the work that you've done on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodge. Commissioner Sanders?
I just want to echo what Commissioner Hodge said, but also give a special thanks to all of the community members who were willing. And I want to stress, they were not paid. These are people that had full-time jobs that were being asked to give up 3 to 4 hours of their time multiple times in order to get the review process taken care of. And I just want to say thank you to them for their commitment to their communities, but also to those of us who made it a point to try and remove any sort of artificial barriers that were attempted to be put up to interfere with their ability to give us their time for free. So I thank them for their support of their communities and for taking their jobs seriously.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. Anyone else? Commissioner Jefferson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again for your work there and for the Racial Equity Office. I've been doing tremendous work since we opened it up, and pandemic hit, and there you were. Thank you for all you've been doing. I got a couple of questions. That community review team, did they receive all 16 that was in the community violence proposals? Did they receive all 16, or is that something that were separated before administration sent them to the community review team?
So community reviewers did not score applications that were not minimally qualified. So if staff determined that an application was not minimally qualified, it did not move to the community review team. And community reviewers did not score applications that were ineligible. We had a couple applications that were not eligible for funding.
You mean a couple out of the 16?
Yes.
Okay.
We're speaking specifically about the community violence intervention category. Community reviewers are currently scoring other categories now.
Okay, so then once the community review team decided on the chosen 3, did they also decide on the funding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would like to say that I'm really excited about being in a position to take a vote on the community priority fund tonight. When we first heard that we were getting the money, I know my first thought was this must be transformative for our community. And it wasn't easy to get here. This for us is a change in the way we do business. It's represented a change in the way we interact with the community. Last year, it was cold, COVID was raging, and we were meeting and people were meeting with us all with masks on in public, as well as by Zoom. And we listened and listened for hours and hours, and people came and talked and told us what we needed to hear to be able to develop something that would respond to the needs of the community. And that's what we're working through. As Ms. Asbury Payne said, we are only considering one pot of funding tonight. So out of $8 million, there remains over $6 million left to allocate, which we believe will take place in August. We're relying on the labor of volunteers. And so I'm hopeful that it will be finished in August, but we have to be cognizant that people are people. So anyway, I just want to say I'm really excited. And then in terms of addressing gun violence, there's really almost no more, there is no more important issue to be addressing in our community. It's, you know, every time a person loses their life to gun violence, it is an incredible, incredible tragedy. And so I'm grateful for the board for focusing on this and hopeful that the work that we're funding tonight will make a real difference in our community and save lives. And by, you know, it's so important. So anyway, rather than start crying, I'll just stop talking. But I know Supreme Felons are here tonight, and I don't know if representatives from the other organizations are not. If any of you wish to take a few minutes, just a few minutes to tell us a little bit about your organization and what you're intending to do with the funding, I think that would be really helpful to all of us.
Good evening, Board of Commissioners.
Good evening.
My name is Brian Foley. I'm the General Manager of Supreme Fellows Incorporation. Who we have present with us is our President, Mr. Billy Cole, our Secretary in the back, Jeanette Hayden, and the other lady who's wearing the Supreme Felons t-shirt is Lauren Diop. And she doesn't meet the qualifications to be a Supreme Felon, and we hope that she doesn't. She was instrumental in actually placing our grant together and helping us to get that together. So that's why she is here present with you. And I just want to tell you publicly, thank you for helping us put our vision on what we have come to do. Supreme Felons Incorporated is an organization that came from the mind of our president, Billy Cole. And his initial thing and work to do was to work with our returning citizens to reduce the recidivism rate that we have in this county. Also, we work with the youth. We work with our juveniles in violence interruption. And we also work with our seniors. We've been instrumental in distributing food. We've been instrumental in serving, delivering COVID relief supplies throughout the pandemic, and we continue through today. As we know on the eastern side of the county, that the violence is really out of control and it's really affecting us. And it was exacerbated much, much more through the pandemic and with those being infected with COVID-19 who had pre-existing conditions. And with that, and a lot of those things are systemic and they are affecting our community much, much more than they do other demographics within our community. We call ourselves supreme felons because each one of us at some time or another were involved with on the other side of the law, and we overcame those obstacles that we got into that placed us into correctional institutions and other things. And because we understand much, much more, and we have been redeemed through our community and through our life experiences, we're best equipped and best able to understand our community better than anybody else. Some of our acts have been violent acts that we perpetrated against individuals, and we had acts perpetrated against us. So we understand the trauma that our community feels. We understand our community much, much more than that. And because we are of the community, we are of the Ypsilanti area community, 48197, 48198, because of our family ties, because of our personal ties, our community ties, we know the people. We know those who are committing the crimes, and we know those who are victims of the crimes. So we are better able, through our life experiences, to able to disrupt crime and get into the nooks and the crannies that where even law enforcement can't get to, or some of them even fear to go to. And I will be very honest about that. We have work relationships with the Ypsilanti Police Department. We have work relationship with the Sheriff's Department. We have a working relationship with the Prosecutor's Office. And all of these things and these relationships that we had prior to, hopefully we'll be awarded this grant, we've been doing it from out of our individual pockets. So now that we will actually have funding to do the work that we can do much more, we know that with our process, with our program, and with our life experiences, that we can better able to address the community violence that's taking place. And we can see a sharp thing in that. One final thing, the work that we did, you can check with the health department on that. As we were handing out COVID supplies, they noticed that there was a big drop in certain demographics of 48197 and 48198, and they couldn't explain why the drop went down in reported cases, positive tests. And what they realized is that once they had put the resource into the supreme felon's hands, and then we were able to get them to those demographics, those areas that had a high infection rate, those numbers went sharply and drastically down. So through our direct experience and our hands-on, the same things you can expect from us when it comes to community violence. We have one thing that most people don't have when it comes to community violence, and that is we have empathy and we have trust of the community. And now we have the trust of the Board of Commissioners. And with that, we want to say thank you very much for trusting us in doing the work.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't plan on saying anything because I know the work has really been led by some of the commissioners working on the east side here, but I just need to say that I'm so thrilled that this is the outcome of this process. Sometimes we try something new, we have no idea whether it's going to work. And time will tell if this strategy truly helps address those challenges that we're facing. But I think I've seen you guys in the community. I've seen the work that you do that is impassioned and impactful, and it connects with folks in the community in a different way than anyone in government ever could, or anyone in law enforcement ever could. And so it's just really inspiring to me to hear from you guys the work that you're doing. It feels really good that we're able to fund that work through county government. This is probably something in many communities that would they would give more money to policing instead, to try and have violence intervention. This is something different than that, and I think and I hope will be better and will have a real impact because you guys are so incredibly dedicated to the community and to this work and to the young people that you're trying to help. So I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I just want to say thank you to everyone involved in this for making this happen. And I look forward to us continuing to be partners to do this work throughout our county. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hodge.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and the work that you do every day. I mean, particularly over the last few weeks, I know how many challenges you faced and how directly you get involved in the work in my community, communities near mine and across the county. It's not often when we vote on a thing that we can definitely say this is going to save lives. And this is one of those things that we can say that. So thank you for your willingness to do the work. And I'm really excited to see how you expand with these additional resources. And thank you too, with all the work that you did with the health department. I remember exactly what you were talking about, and that was really impactful. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, and appreciate everything that you guys have done in the community. But most of all, I really am excited about the sheriff and the Ypsilanti police being in concert with you. We know that they are doing a job that needs help from people in the community. So for that, I will support this. Thank you.
Commissioner Sanders.
I'm only aware of or know of at least two of you there in the audience, but I want to say thank you for bringing forth the proposal for us to be able to review and approve. But more importantly, thank you for having the courage to be able to support your family, your community, because I think that I don't know that it's really been done. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to say to someone in your own family, straighten up and fly right. And that has been missing. And so I just want to say I appreciate your work because as you stated before, and this is true, there are many of us that wouldn't dare to travel in some of the areas that you are doing your work. And so we need to put our money where our mouth is, especially if we're not willing to do the work. But also because your work in your own community, in and of itself holds you accountable. That it's not, as some people may think, up to us as the commissioners because we've provided funding, but what we've really done is allocated money that the community, is their money. So just thank you for the work. I have all faith that you will do what you say you're going to do. And because, it's hard not to do it and then still face those same neighbors. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I want to thank you again. I've had the privilege to work with some of your members, especially Billy Coles at the Violence Intervention Task Force. I can't remember exactly what we call ourselves, Violence Intervention Group, along with Commissioner Hodge and Administrator Dill. And we've also been able to work with some of the young men who the Supreme Felons have worked with, who are really in a better place, doing some really constructive work in the community themselves. And I know this works because we've already seen with a few young men that you have succeeded. And God bless you. It's just incredible what you do, and I'm so grateful. You want to say something?
Well, everyone else has. So I just wanted to remind some of you, I can recall a Saturday morning back late last year where we talked about really leaning into this work. And I felt a lot of doubt. And what I said at that time is judge us being the county board of commissioners and administration by our deeds and actions. And here we are today. And I just think it serves as a reminder, this is a different kind of board. This is a different kind of leadership that we are trying to lean into in Washtenaw County. And I'm just so grateful for all that you all are doing. And I mean that sincerely to Supreme Felons and also this County Board of Commissioners, because it represents a change in how we behave in Washtenaw County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any more comments? All right, we're ready for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Absolutely.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar.
Yes.
Item passed.
All right, well, I want to say hooray and yell up, jump up and down, but I'm not going to. I'm going to move on to the next item. A resolution instructing the county administrator to develop, I'm going back. A resolution to oppose changes to the Wagner-Pizer Act and support the decision-making of local workforce development boards. Oh,
I don't know if there's anybody from the other two. organizations.
I didn't get the sense that there
You didn't get
was.
sense, okay.
Is there anybody from a Brighter Way or the Dispute Resolution Center? Okay. All right, so in terms of Commissioner Sanders, do you want to make any comments about the Wagner-Pizer Act, or shall I just make my comment? Sorry to put you on the.
Just my understanding from sitting on the Michigan Works Consortium Board that this act, I think, would have a negative impact on the services that we are providing for our residents here in Washtenaw County, and actually would take the decision-making away from the Michigan Works staff. And I asked a number of questions. I won't belabor the audience with what those were, but during this presentation that I attended, it is my belief that it is not in the best interest of us to support this act.
Thank you. Right, it would decimate the labor force working for the Michigan Works Southeast and would make it more difficult for people to access benefits. All right, any other discussion? All right, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. And then lastly is a resolution instructing the county administrator to develop a framework for a millage to support older adults in Washtenaw County. I think we might need the administrator back for that conversation. So. I don't know. Andy pulled it. Okay, we don't need him. Commissioner Levesque.
So we heard comment earlier, and we've heard comment at meetings in the past in terms of a senior millage, and it's been framed largely in the context of providing services that are needed for that population, and in the context that we are, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, one of like 10 or fewer, 9, forgive me, Michigan counties that don't have a senior millage. And I think those are important. I guess what I would say though is this: if we're serious about this, and believe me, I'm serious about just about any human service millage, I think we need to have a full audit and full court press of every existing county department and service that interacts with senior services so that we can fully leverage these dollars if we go that route. And I'll probably sound like a broken record on that, but look, for as much grief as we took with the complexity of the ballot language and the process around the community mental health and public safety millage, both those entities have been able to leverage it for significant millions of outside dollars. So I do think we should develop this, but I think we should contextualize it as a board and as commissioners as an effort that not only funds needed services for senior citizens, but fully optimizes our entire human services portfolio of services, because we're strengthening a key aspect of it. And I hope the folks who are disappointed that we didn't put it on this year will understand that I think, one, getting through the ride millage in August and a likely climate millage in Ann Arbor in November, and getting ourselves as an organization that additional 9 or 6 or even 12 months to get our own, house in order here to make the best go at this. I think that's going to pay big dividends ultimately in passage, but more importantly in terms of how effective we can be with any resources if we do get a millage in the future. Again, it's an if, not a guarantee. So I just wanted to say that, Chair, and appreciate all the work on this, and thank you to Commissioner Masiewski for his expertise as well on this topic.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Sanders?
I don't know. I feel like Commissioner Labar might have been eavesdropping on a conversation that I had. But I will support what he has had to say and add to it by saying I personally support our seniors. I have responsibility for a senior parent. And I know what it's like to have to care for senior grandparents and the special needs that they have. But I believe that if we're going to be looking at millage language, we need to be considerate of the fact that there is considerable overlap between what we're talking about for our seniors and human services. And so I think that it's best if we try not to just solely isolate the seniors, not meaning that they should not be our priority, but recognizing that there is an interaction between them and family members that may also be in need of human services in order to provide for those seniors. So when you talk about the M word, I would like for us to be considerate and in a sense, go big or go home. If we're gonna be asking our constituents to support the M, then let's make sure that it is as much encompassing of the needs of our seniors and the human services that interact and also overlap with other residents that we are serving. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Jefferson?
Thank you, Chair. I agree there is a need for our seniors to be taken care of. And as I heard earlier, there are other counties that have such a millage. Our millages that we have passed in the past, and even with this board, I have thought about some things that I've been listening to about those millages. When we take those millages and look at them real closely and see if we can find a way to do something to those millages, to find dollars within those millages and make an effort to come back with a way to deal with this millage for seniors in a way that it doesn't tax our residents as much as not looking at how we can find ways to distribute what we already have in a more equitable way. So I'm just talking about trying to find a way to look at all of those millages, find out if there's a way that we can find a way to deal with those millages as a way of dealing with finding funding for our seniors. Because we're at a point, we were told earlier this year, to where we're reaching a high level of taxation in the county to where we're going to be almost not able to bring any more millages after a while. So we need to find a way to congregate, anyways, to get those things together and put them in a framework for administration so they can take a look at them and see if there's a way to do something that can deal with the seniors with what we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Machewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start by thanking the folks from the Say Yes to Seniors group who were under that banner and under a previous banner before I've been a commissioner. I've been working on this issue and their continued advocacy on it. I welcome the conversation that this resolution will kick off, as previous comments have alluded to, leveraging resources and maximizing the benefit of this. So I look forward to exploring those opportunities and seeing what we can do. We very often we hold up King County, Washington as a model. King County, Washington has a millage that does some of the things that Commissioner LeBar and Commissioner Sanders have mentioned tonight. There are only 9 other counties, well, besides us, 8 other counties in the state that don't have this. I think that the next county commission that's seated around this table in 2023 will have a framework from the county administration to seriously consider this question and hopefully put it on the ballot for the voters to ultimately decide. But I look forward to consideration of that question because it does touch so many things that we deal with at the county level of government: door-to-door transportation, public health, evidence-based programs, health and wellness, nutrition services, so many things. And I thank everybody around this table over the past 3.5 years. I've had many conversations about this topic and look forward to having more over the next few months as county admin works on this. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Hodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say I want to thank Commissioner Machewski for all of his work on this and the ongoing work that in the conversations that we had that led us to this point to have this kind of resolution that's going to give us this framework. I firmly believe if we're going to do it, we got to do it right. And having a framework like this and making sure that if we do it, it's an appropriate number of mills. I wouldn't want us to do less and then not be able to provide the kinds of services that we need to provide. So I'm grateful for the conversations that we had that have helped bring us here. Really in agreement with what Commissioner Sanders and Commissioner LeBar said about taking a look at the broader landscape of our services to make sure that we're delivering human services in the right way. So like I said earlier, we're a board that cares about human services. We're a county that cares about human services. And this is, I think, emblematic of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So I have publicly been in favor of a senior millage, and it's with a bit of a heavy heart that tonight I plan to vote to approve this resolution because I do see the need for increased funding of senior services in our county. And it would be hard for me to do this without that $4 million potentially allocated in the next ARPA package. So I hope that everybody will support that. I volunteer with the Northfield Township Senior Center and I deliver things sometimes, holiday baskets and things like that, and have had lunch with the seniors many times, in addition to having my own family situations to draw upon. And I know that seniors need support, and especially in the rural area. Well, it doesn't matter really. Like in the rural area or in a more urban area, it's very easy for seniors to become isolated. And without a constant, regular stream of support, bad things can happen that didn't need to happen. And so I'm glad that we're looking at allocating those $4 million and hope that everybody will be open if we hear of needs to trying to support and fill those needs as we go, because the pandemic has been very difficult on seniors, and there are needs that crop up from time to time. I'd like to thank Commissioner Machewski, especially for your leadership on aging issues. Because of your day job, you know quite a bit, and for the Say Yes to Seniors group, and also for the Commission on Aging, as well as the other people and the leaders of our local senior centers who are doing the work and have given us a lot of input on this issue. So with that, I think we are ready for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner LeBar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. So next we have a report. Oh, yeah, next we have a report from the county administrator.
No report?
Thank you. Report of the chair, no report tonight. Items for current or future discussion. Commissioner LeBar.
Chair, I just want to report that I spent a lovely hour and a half in one Commissioner Shannon Beeman's district this past July 3rd for the Manchester fireworks, and I found them both patriotic and welcoming in terms of my Ann Arbor-based family. So I wanted to thank Commissioner Beeman for all she does to make her district great. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could follow up on that, Commissioner LeBar, I believe that there is a large chicken broil happening. I believe it's the 16th. And my understanding is that we are all invited, so we could just make sure not to create quorum, but I think there's plenty of room in Manchester for all of us to come on down for a chicken broil.
Your mouths will be too full with chicken anyway. And the real work goes to the Manchester Men's Club. So thank them for all that they do to put on a great show every year.
Thank you. Anything else for current or future discussion? All right. Any pending items? Not that I know of. All right, then I'd like a motion to adjourn to the next session.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful meeting. Thank you, everybody in the audience.